exactly identical to the sun gods of the West in Egypt, is known as Ra, Amen-Ra.
Yes, yes.
So the Druids and the Ammonists were one people. The Druids and, in fact, the Druids in the East, you might as well just be calling them Ammonists. That's how close they were. The Shem-Suhor, the Arya, the Druids in an Egyptian context are nothing more than the historians and Egyptologists for years have been referring to as the Ammonists.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as the name also then tells you, one step further we go, and we find out that the name tells you Amen is obviously the god's name, Amen-Ra.
Yes.
Now, this is in the astrotheology book. Okay, combine the name of the Scythian god Ish to the Ammonist god Ra, and you have Ishra, and El just means messenger of.
Or God or Most High or something like that?
Well, originally, exactly, but when it's attached to the end of a name, it usually just meant the messenger of that god.
Aha, really? Okay. Mm-hmm.
God like messenger, or messenger of the god. And so the Ish, Ra, El is nothing more than the messengers of Isis and the messengers of Ra. In other words, the messengers of the solar cult.
Yes.
An Israelite originally was a member of the solar cult, somebody who literally studied the heavens, and who was a dignitary within the solar cult. Now, of course, that's why Sunday is still worshipped by Christians and so on. They're still using some of these relics.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, the word not only shows you that there's a West-East connection, that there was a collaboration between the Ammonists and the Proto-Scythians, or let's even be more specific, the Arya, because later on the Scythians became corrupted by this interaction with the Atnists. But the word originally is nothing more than a pretty poor corruption of the names of the two supreme gods, you see, of the West and the East.
Yeah, I just want to ask you, Michael, here about the Israelite, or if we say Hebrew or Iberu, as you've mentioned before on this program. What about the worship of Saturn or the Sabbath? Is there any connection there to the Druids?
Well, yes, because in the stellar cult, different dignity. Remember, I said the different stone circles were aligned to different planets and luminaries.
Yeah.
Well, the principles of these planets, meaning psychic states, archetypes, were very much under study. And so Saturn was the planet that represented a type of consciousness that also represented a kind of school. Just like you have to pass through different schools in the mystery tradition, the Saturnalian cult,
Yes.
was a particular school. Just like you have divisions of Sikhism, divisions of Judaism, divisions of Christianity. Well, so you had divisions of Druidism. And under the Saturnian cult, the shaman or the priest had to go through certain trials and tribulations. And Saturn had its own symbols, like black, you see,
Yeah.
color black. Yeah, the square, all the different symbols and systems is because they believe, just like the initiate in India today believes that you have to pass through the 7 chakras in order to become enlightened, to arrive at the third eye. Well, something similar was going on in ancient times in which they believed that you have to pass through each of the houses that are represented by the different planets.
Yes.
And until you matriculate, pass through the house of Mercury, the house of Jupiter, the house of Saturn, you see, you're not going anywhere. Again, we're talking astrology. People listening to this will realize, okay, I understand that. That means passing through each of the 12 signs of the zodiac, the trials of the zodiac, emphasizing that man is all 12. The zodiac is nothing more than 12 facets of a single individual, 12 mirrors of one face, you see. Yeah, so all of these have a tremendous importance. The sublunary and the whole concept of passing through these colleges to matriculate and master all the different aspects of yourself, basically.
If we go back again and talk about the Scythians, do you believe that they made their way then to the Indus Valley, that area, and actually became known there as the area? Yeah,
they two possibilities. One is that the Scythians was a later. Oh, there's no question about it that the Scythians did get to the Indus Valley, but they may have been a later group because the Scythian history is basically picking up from about 2000, 1400 BC.
Mm-hmm.
The original white-skinned visitors or people, the original area that moved out to the Indus Valley. You see, we're in much earlier days. This is before the age of catastrophe. So people have to understand that we're talking about two different west to east transitions. Both, though, are going to be denied by Western experts because of what they mean.
Yes.
There's no doubt in my mind, you see, that the original Arya had moved out even as early as 10,000 BC. And we know this because the whole Indus Valley complex was devastated because of the drying up of the Saraswati River.
Yes, yes.
And when that happened, those communities, which scholars now believe had millions of inhabitants, millions, can you believe that? Yeah, millions of inhabitants along the Saraswati River from Pakistan into India, all cohabitating, a very high culture, a culture that's been forgotten, you see, that the remnant of that was referred to as the Aryan culture, you know, that now percolated down into northern India, 700 BC, whatever, you know, and became sort of the backbone of a lot of misinterpreted, you know, concepts.
Yes.
Yeah, but I have no doubt in my mind that the Scythian, and the reason why is because Professor L.A. Waddell, who is a scholar who, in his own way, also talked about a sort of a west to east transition. He didn't take it from Britain like I do. He believed it happened from Anatolia, from Turkey, and involved people like the Scythians and the Phoenicians, you see. But even if you can't accept the more early migration from the far west, like I'm talking about, at least Professor Waddell, who's also his books were suppressed. He's one of the most suppressed authors.
Yes.
And he's even going light. He's saying, listen, the people who lived in Turkey, specifically Cappadocia, in ancient times, this is just about 3,000 years BC, are a people who, because of, I don't think he also talks about catastrophe. He doesn't give the reasons why they migrated.
Okay.
Yeah, he just says that they all moved, and he's definitely placed these people, and believe me, he was one hell of a linguist. This guy spoke about 5 of the Indian languages, was one of the most incredible philologists and etymologists in the completely academic sense, Henrik.
Right.
So people fire and brimstone at people like me for, dabbling with etymologies, and they think it's all spurious. They haven't the faintest idea of the people who've already confirmed what I'm talking about and so much more. L.A. Waddell was one of the most incredible linguists. He was one of the first people to ever study the Sumerian script when it first came out. Of course, he drew different conclusions than all the other liars and fakers were teaching, because he understood that there was a west to east migration.
Right.
And his books are very important so that people can look into this whole question of those who inhabited Cappadocia, Turkey, and their role in colonizing India and also Egypt.
Right. Let's see here. If we talk about the Hyksos, the Scythians, we can say that they were Attonists then. They were expelled and decided to make a return to their Western ancestral homes to form a new empire. And I think you connect these Attonists to the some of the Roman elites, the Roman elite families, but also to the Merovingians of Germany, France, and Britain. Tell us about this.
Well, that goes back to what I was saying about the fact that it's so intriguing that if you follow my thesis and do identify the Hyksos pharaohs as Scythians, that means that they were from outside originally, and that they teamed up with the Attonists of Egypt. Either they were the Attonists of Egypt, straight up, or a secondary interpretation is that no, they were confederates of the Attonists.
Yes.
It's hard to know. It's hard to know which one it was, you see.
Yeah.
Did the Attonists grow out of Egypt through the sun priests of the Temple of Heliopolis? One aspect seems to say that that's the case. And then these Scythians who moved into Egypt were welcomed, you see. The Irish records say that the Scythians entered in and they assisted the pharaoh of the time, possibly Akhenaten, or his father, in wars against their enemies.
Right.
And for that reason, they were heavily rewarded with land and jewels and property and all of this stuff. So what I think is that they were actually on target right at about the time of Akhenaten's reign. This is what I think. My own intuition tells me that Akhenaten was at war, you see, and we know this. There was tremendous conflict, and that these Scythians came in and took his side. For whatever reason I wouldn't know, these are members of the solar cult, members of the positive, uncorrupted solar cult in Scythia, and originally, as you said, displaced from Britain. So they're perfectly Druidic, they're perfectly members of the Arya, they're Gothics, they're Nordics, the Saka. But one small group, the Irish legends say that one small group broke off from Scythia, headed to Egypt for whatever reason, helped the local pharaoh in various wars against his enemies, all exactly dated to around the time of Moses and Akhenaten. You see, there's this incredible dating. They're heavily rewarded for this. They marry into the pharaoh's family. They take wives, right, and all of that.
Yeah.
And then subsequently, the Irish records say, for no specific reason, they leave.
Uh-huh.
We know that that ties in with not just leaving or going on vacation. We know that what that means. We know that that's the famous expulsion.
The Exodus, yes.
You have to join up the dots, you see, and then you find out, oh my goodness, the leaving is because these people are being exiled. That means that they have teamed up with the Atlas and Akhenaten, because it's Atlas and Akhenaten who's being thrown out. Egyptologists know this.
Yes.
Yeah. So the Scythian vacation of Egypt happens to coincide. So obviously, right?
Yeah.
And reading the Irish records leaves you in no doubt about it, that these are the same people, or they're at least two confederates. And see that old Templar symbol? The main emblem of the Knights Templar is two riders on a single horseback?
Yeah, yeah.
This is where I think this comes from, and I have a section on this in the appendices. We'll put a link up to this interviews page.
Yes.
And people can go and see that symbol and see what I have to say about it, because I believe that Templar symbol, and also the Templar symbol of the double cross, they have a double cross symbol as well, a red cross that's two crosses, right?
Yeah.
I think this doubling up motif, and even the double-headed eagle, all of this doubling up stuff that you keep seeing in Masonic, is because there was two contingents that had become joined at the hip. This is what I believe. And then after being expunged from Egypt, they start moving back to Scythia. But guess what the Irish records say? They confirm what I'm talking about. When these Atenist Scythians got to Scythia, they weren't welcomed back.
Right, exactly.
They were not welcomed back. The Irish legends are clear on this. And they had skirmishes. They had a lot of rivalry. They had fighting for the throne. And then they had eventually to leave Scythia, and that is when they headed to Spain, and then later over to Ireland. And that is why all the Irish history books pick up the story of the Milesians, or the conquest, you see, of Ireland from Spain.
Ah, okay. I see.
They're hesitant, Henrik, to go deeper into who they call them Iberians and Milesians, right? And they often admit that they were Scythians. Even the Irish records do admit they were Scythians. But they don't then say, well, what was going on in Scythia? What was the little story before they came to Spain? Oh, most of the scholars, 9 times out of 10, when they're dealing with this particular area of Irish history, strictly stick to the presence of these people in Spain, because they were there for a long period of time. It's partly justified, but they refuse to dabble deeper. And I think that they refuse to do it because they know what we're talking about here, that in fact this would trace it back to Egypt, and that they don't want to confirm, you see.
Interesting.
But Ralph Ellis has confirmed it. The other independent scholars have confirmed it. That the very boats they were using, many of the things, the implements and the names of the places that they were giving to these lands in Spain were Egyptian.
Yeah.
And even certain beads have been discovered. We're even talking archaeology here, in which the designs of tombs, the laying out of the mummification, all these things that are found in Spain and Portugal, and partly in France, betray a certain Egyptian look to it, you see?
Right.
So we know then that these people who eventually conquered Ireland had an Egyptian connection, and I have fleshed that out to show, yeah, they did, and they brought with them no less than the daughter of Akhenaten, who gave her name to Scotland.
Scota.
Her nickname was Scota, yeah.
Yes. This is fascinating, and of course this is the symbolism also here. That's a very interesting, interpretation to all of this. We can think of, you mentioned two riders on one horse. I'm thinking obviously of the double-headed eagle, right, looking both east and west, that this is a joining of two different groups, and this is basically the initiation or the initial steps, I should say, towards a new world order, a unified, a one world order, basically. This is potentially the first step towards this that we can see here. Well,
it's an old world, it's new world order because of an old world disorder. Like we said in the previous section, when you see that term written under an Egyptian pyramid, you've got to start connecting the dots and wonder, was there an old world disorder? Well, we know there was an ancient pre-Diluvian disorder, but then there was one in Egypt. There was this disorder in Egypt in which there was a